We know there was slavery that was still tolerated when the nation began. We know that was an evil, and it was a scourge and a blot and a stain upon our history. But we also know that the very founders that wrote those documents worked tirelessly until slavery was no more in the United States. And I think it is high time that we recognize the contribution of our forebears who worked tirelessly, men like John Quincy Adams, who would not rest until slavery was extinguished. It didn't matter the color of their skin. It didn't matter their language. It didn't matter their economic status. It didn't matter whether they descended from nobility or whether they were of a higher class or a lower class. It made no difference. Once you got here, we were all the same.
I think we know that just within a day or so, the President of the United States will be taking a trip over to India that is expected to cost the taxpayers $200 million a day. He's taking 2,000 people with him. He'll be renting out over 870 rooms in India, and these are five-star hotel rooms at the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. This is the kind of...
I will take the liberty this time of dismissing as absolutely absurd this notion that somehow we were deploying 10% of the Navy, some 34 ships and an aircraft carrier in support of the President's trip to Asia. That's just comical. Nothing close to that is being done.
Let's remember, the war in Afghanistan costs, according to the Congressional Budget Office, about $190 million a day. So the idea that a president's trip might cost more than the war in Afghanistan, that just doesn't make any sense.
Recently, of course, the 2010 census is almost upon us, and you said regarding questions that would go beyond how many people are in the actual household, you said, for my family, the only question that we will be answering is how many people are in our home. We won't be answering any information beyond that because the Constitution doesn't require any information beyond that. Do you stand by that statement? Because PolitiFact.com did a fact check on that. They actually call that a pants-on-fire mischaracterization of what the Constitution says about the enumeration of people. Does the Constitution really say that?
The Constitution requires the number of people to enumerate or number the people that live in the district. Beyond that, the Congress has passed laws about the census and what people need to do. The essence of my comments had to do with the invasive personal nature of the questions. Now the questions have gotten out of control. There's a new survey that's over 28 pages long, and that goes every year to about 3 million households. It's very invasive, very personal questions, and on the form it says this is mandatory. Americans are required to answer these questions under penalty of fine. I just don't think Americans should be compelled to answer personal questions that the federal government mandates that they answer. I think people have a zone of privacy that the government should respect.
But isn't that an argument to be had there in the halls of Congress? Because what the Constitution does, it empowers Congress to make the laws for how the census is carried out, and it's the Congress over the years.
That's right.
So instead of citing the Constitution, should you not be coming down on Congress to say, look, I don't like the way that Congress has dealt with this, we need to change that?
Well, I wish more members would cite the Constitution. I think that would be a good thing because the Constitution limits the authority of the United States Congress. We can only act within the enumerated powers of the Constitution. So I would like if we could observe and look to the Constitution more to direct our actions. And I think, yes, of course, the discussion needs to be here as it has been. And I'm working with my colleagues here to try and reform the United States Census. But the census does have a lot of problems, and it seems like it has morphed into becoming a justification for growing big government programs. And that's really not the purpose. The fundamental purpose, as stated in the Constitution, is the enumeration of the citizenry within the various states.
All right. But we should point out, though, that Congress's use of the census to ask questions beyond the number of people in a household has been upheld several times by the Supreme Court. So
yes, and you're right. That's true.
Obviously, you've got a big fight on your hands there. Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, great to catch up with you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you, John.
It's no secret that our nation may very well be experiencing the hand of judgment. Our nation has seen judgment not once but twice on September 11th.
And so it reminds me of the Shakespeare line, "Thou protestest too much." Didn't you know this was going to happen? We knew it.
Not all cultures are equal. Not all values
are equal. Let's repeal this failure before it literally kills women, kills children, kills senior citizens. Let's not do that. Carbon dioxide is portrayed as harmful, but there isn't even one study that can be produced that shows that carbon dioxide is a harmful gas.
Now we're back into science, some scientists talking for global warming. I don't think that it has been established yet as a fact that global warming is the issue of the day.
2005, that taking away the minimum wage could potentially virtually wipe out unemployment. Where's the evidence for that?
People are very upset that the president has us at 9.1% unemployment.
Let me try one more time. So you're saying that the minimum wage is one of those regulations you'd take a look at, you'd try to eliminate it?
Well, what I'm saying is that I think that we need to look at all regulation.
All the money that we owe China, I think we might rightly say, who's your daddy?
After the State of the Union, you know, they always have the rebuttal, that there were two Republican responses. First, they had Congressman Paul Ryan, never heard of him, but okay. Now we know who he is. And then Michele Bachmann. So if you watch the whole night, it was kind of evolution in reverse. You know, you had Obama, and then Paul Ryan, and then Michele Bachmann. Then Animal Planet had a squirrel monkey give his take. She didn't look into the camera. She said America was created by a miracle. And she said secret armies of IRS agents are trying to take away your light bulbs. Can I show you this? This is the chart that Michele Bachmann showed, okay, that tried to convince people that this is the Bush in the red, this is the deficit spending, and here's Obama's. Look, he's got a much longer one.
You can't help yourself.
But can I just take a red pen to this and show why this is bullshit? First of all, this is 2009. That's Bush's budget up until October. So that's red. Also, one reason these are so long is because Obama started to put the wars on the books. You see, we didn't pay for the wars. So all these should be a little higher.
It's in raw accounting. The big items are raw.
I'm glad you brought out Michele's chart, because honestly I think Michele Bachmann's speech was a mess, and not just because she looked at her collective left ear while she spoke.
I don't know what she was doing, but I think CNN, which was the only news channel, the only channel at all that chose to air this, might have had second thoughts. Look at the crawl that they were showing while they were airing the Michele Bachmann tape.
Rates spike.
Michele Bachmann represents the 6th District of Minnesota. She founded the House Tea Party Congress. What? What the hell is she looking at? Isn't she on Real Housewives of Orange County? You were watching exclusive coverage of something that seemed like a good idea. Oh, Jesus, she brought slides.
She borrowed your chart, Bill. That is your chart.
Oh, my God, we've made a horrible mistake. You lie. What's next, a word from Gary Busey? I quit. Okay. Let's bring out
He seems to be at the center of the Republican debate right now. He's at 8% in our latest poll. You're down at 1%. Karl Rove and other Republicans call him a joke.
That means you've got room to grow.
You've got room to grow. Sarah Palin has praise for him. Do you take his candidacy seriously?
Well, I think that it's up to Donald Trump if he takes his candidacy seriously. Certainly, he's had a good foothold with a lot of people in the United States. I think they're intrigued by him and what he has to say.
He continues to raise these questions about the president's birth status. And last night you were on Fox News suggesting the president should come forward with his birth certificate as well.
And what I've said about that is I was asked the question about that, and Republicans are constantly asked to vouch for the authenticity of the birth certificate. The only one who can is the clerk of court in the county where someone is born, and that's where people should go. Don't ask Republicans, go ask the clerk of court.
But actually one of your supporters in the state of Iowa has put forward a bill that would require presidential candidates to file their birth certificate with their candidacy. Do you support that?
Well, Governor Jan Brewer just vetoed that bill in Arizona because she felt that that was a bridge too far, that it wouldn't be up to the authenticators in each state to do that, that would be a federal issue. There is a federal piece of legislation that hasn't gone anywhere that would also require that candidates put forward their birth certificate. I have no problem giving my birth certificate. It wouldn't bother me at all. I've got one. It's authenticated. Take it.
Well, but so does the president. According to the bill, a candidate for president or vice president shall attach to and file with the affidavit a copy of the candidate's birth certificate certified by the appropriate official in the candidate's state of birth. And
That's right.
Well, I have the president's certificate right here. It's certified. It's got a certification number. It's got the registrar of the state signed. It's got a seal on it, and it says this copy serves as prima facie evidence of the fact of birth in any court proceeding.
Well, then that should settle it.
So it's over.
That's what should settle it. I take the president at his word, and I think for any, I would have no problem, and apparently the president wouldn't either. Introduce that, we're done. Move
so this
on.
is over.
End
Well,
of
this has
story.
been introduced. So this case is this story's over.
Well, as long as someone introduces it, I guess it's over.
It's right there.
Yeah, there you go.
How do you pronounce the name of your movie?
It's religious. It's like you're saying religion and then you go to ridiculous. For obvious reasons.
Well, speaking of which, let's take a look at a little favorite of ours now from last Friday. This is Minnesota Congresswoman Michele Bachmann and what she had to say about her colleagues on Capitol Hill. So this is a character issue. You believe that Barack Obama you're suspicious because of this relationship, may have anti-American views. Otherwise, it's probably irrelevant to this discussion. So
Absolutely.
You believe it brings in the, so you believe that Barack Obama
Yes.
may have anti-American views?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very concerned that he may have anti-American views. That's what the American people are concerned about. That's why they want to know what his answers are. That's why Joe the plumber has figured so highly in the last few days. Because Joe the plumber, what I would say is that the news media should do a penetrating expose and take a look. I wish they would. I wish the American media would take a great look at the views of the people in Congress and find out, are they pro-America or anti-America? I think people would love to see an expose like that.
Hey, Bill, are you willing to take up your burden on that and conduct a penetrating investigation of the anti-American views on the other side of the aisle?
Chris, I love it when you give dumb people just enough rope to hang themselves. And
Evening tonight is Michele Bachmann's latest misstep, the beginning of the end of her presidential campaign. By most accounts, Bachmann did well in the CNN Tea Party Republican debate, taking Rick Perry to task on his executive order requiring girls to get the HPV vaccine, suggesting he was catering to pharmaceutical maker Merck. And then she did this.
I will tell you that I had a mother last night come up to me here in Tampa, Florida after the debate. She told me that her little daughter took that vaccine, that injection, and she suffered from mental retardation thereafter. It can have very dangerous side effects. The mother was crying when she came up to me last night. I didn't know who she was before the debate. This is the very real concern, and people have to draw their own conclusions.
That was Bachmann on the Today Show recounting what some unnamed stranger allegedly said to her. Now, we have no reason to doubt someone actually said this to Mrs. Bachmann, but it is incredibly irresponsible of her to repeat what this person said as part of her argument about the HPV vaccine and then suddenly throw up her hands and say, you'll have to make of it what you will. Keeping them honest, the CDC says there is absolutely no evidence that the HPV vaccine has any link whatsoever to the onset of mental disabilities. Now, it's certainly not a new phenomenon for politicians to stretch the truth, manipulate facts. But Bachmann is spreading all-out falsehood here, a dangerous falsehood at that. And it's not the first time she's done this by any stretch of the imagination. I just want to play you some of Michele Bachmann's other statements in the past. And keep in mind, there's no political wiggle room here on these statements, no gray areas, no spin. What you're about to hear is just flat-out, factually incorrect statements.
Well, I think we know that just within a day or so, the President of the United States will be taking a trip over to India that is expected to cost the taxpayers $200 million a day. He's taking 2,000 people with him. He'll be renting out over 870 rooms in India, and these are five-star hotel rooms at the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. That's why this week it's ironic and sad that the president released all of the oil from the strategic oil reserve. Is that abortion? Does that mean that someone's 13-year-old daughter could walk into a sex clinic, have a pregnancy test done, be taken away to the local Planned Parenthood abortion clinic, have their abortion, be back and go home on the school bus that night? Mom and Dad are never the wiser. The executive director of Planned Parenthood in Illinois said they want to become the lens crafter of big abortion in Illinois. I find it interesting that it was back in the 1970s that the swine flu broke out then under another Democrat president, Jimmy Carter, and I'm not blaming this on President Obama. I just think it's an interesting coincidence.
Like Speaker Pelosi, who has been busy sticking the taxpayer with her $100,000 bar tab for alcohol on the military jets that she's flying.
Well, the latest CNN ORC poll, which was done before the debate, has Bachmann in seventh place as Republicans' choice for the presidential nominee behind Rick Perry, Mitt Romney, Sarah Palin, Ron Paul, Herman Cain, and Newt Gingrich. So the question is, have the falsehood, the misstatements, the false statements that she's made caught up with her? Do voters care about the truth? Joining us now live, CNN senior political analyst David Gergen and Ron Carey, who is Bachmann's former chief of staff. Ron, thanks for being with us. You were Bachmann's chief of staff. Why does this stuff seem to happen over and over again with her? I mean, is it willful on her part? Is it carelessness? What is it?
Well, Michele is very impulsive from a personality standpoint, and she, to her credit, she reads an awful lot of information, but sometimes I'm afraid that she reads maybe 80 or 90% and leaves out or forgets the 10 or 20% that can change the outcome. So her impulsive nature, coupled with the fact that she sometimes doesn't digest information as carefully as she should, leads to these kind of impulsive statements that sometimes are just off the mark enough that it makes her into a more of a provocative, controversial figure.
So are these things which are written out in advance for her, or are these things which just are in her head and pop out?
No, that's one of the challenges I found with working with Michele, and it's consistent with other people who've worked with her, is the fact that she doesn't use her staff well. She's pretty much independent and does her own research. I mean, she'll be out there on the stump preparing her own remarks and speaking off the cuff with no staff intervention or involvement whatsoever. So it's really difficult to prep her and help her kind of fact check before she goes out speaking, because she will be out there speaking and you'll say, where did this come from? And it's something that she maybe heard on TV. I mean, a great example, I think just a month or so ago, is when she kind of flubbed the Elvis anniversary, and she probably heard something that morning on TV about the anniversary of Elvis, and she interpreted it without listening carefully as his birthday instead of the anniversary of his passing. And that's just, it's really hard for the staff to manage her lack of ability to stay on script.
And David, that's certainly, one of the minor things, the Elvis thing, but a lot of the things she's saying are serious issues with serious political ramifications, and that you shouldn't be making misstatements about, like mental disabilities being brought about by HPV vaccine. It doesn't seem, David Gergen, that these things stick, though, that we are constantly pointing out this is factually incorrect, and yet it doesn't seem to, at least up until now, hasn't really had much of an impact on her.
Anderson, the Americans are very forgiving, and often a person will start who's got a sort of a sizzling background, and they've done well. They're well-meaning, compassionate as she is, and when they get into the big time, and they get into this is the NFL. In effect, she's playing in that. It's a much tougher game, and you're forgiven one or two, but you get a whole string like this, particularly this last one, and I think it has done serious damage to her campaign, because in this last event about the vaccine, what she has said, in effect, has given further fuel to this whole anti-vaccination crowd that has claimed that all sorts of vaccinations cause problems for children, especially getting vaccinated for autism. I mean, a vaccination can lead to autism. That's what the argument is. If you get vaccinated for various childhood diseases, you get autism. That's been proven wrong. It was very wrong-headed. A lot of kids didn't get vaccinated as a result. And there are parts of this world where the number of deaths went up in children that are attributed to that. And this sort of anti-vaccination is sort of anti-science view that she's embraced here. I think, she didn't do it willingly. I mean, I think she's mistaken did it. It is very dangerous because it encourages parents not to get their children vaccinated. And to go back to this Centers for Disease Control you cited earlier, the CDC is one of the most important scientific institutions we have, and they have recommended that young girls, 11 and 12 years old, be vaccinated against this HPV because it is the most common sexually transmitted disease, and it can be dangerous for children. And to sort of play against that and say, no, don't get vaccinated at all, is, frankly irresponsible. And she ought to right away say, I made a mistake on this one, own up to it, and try to move on.
Well, if I can comment, David, I think, is a bit off in the fact that I don't think, in defending Michele, she didn't say don't get vaccinated. She said that parents should have the right to make that decision, not have it mandated by the government.
But Ron, if she's saying that it causes and I'm using her term, mental retardation, and then kind of throwing up her hands and saying, make of that what you will, I mean, that's pretty damning stuff to be thrown out there with, and to have it be medically incorrect information.
Well, what I guess I'd like to really say is that, Michele's been known ever since she was elected to Congress here or ran for Congress as making very provocative statements, and it really has impacted her in Minnesota. She has a history of underperforming compared to other Republicans on the ballot, and I think the one thing that Republicans will agree upon this year is that Barack Obama needs to be
I agree with what you just said, Ron. I just want to say one thing. The people who warned parents that if they had their children vaccinated, they could easily become autistic, did terrible damage because it persuaded a number of parents not to have their children vaccinated. And to warn that getting vaccinated for HPV causes mental retardation is making exactly the same mistake and causes it, and particularly when it comes from a leading political figure in the country.
We got to leave it there, gentlemen. Ron Kerr, it's good to have you on. David Gergen as